Hey everyone! Welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Lee feels compelled to disclose to Luna the truth. She is Luna's biological mother. Lee Finnegan had never wanted this day to come, but the walls had finally closed in on her, and as much as she had built her entire adult life around control, secrecy, precision, and discipline, she suddenly found herself at a loss, cornered by the weight of her past choices and by the relentless demands of the present. And when she looked at Luna Nozawa sitting in front of her, eyes red, face streaked with tears, posture fragile but still defiant, she realized that she could no longer dodge, no longer manipulate, no longer sidestep the inevitable confrontation that had been looming over them for months, if not years. The truth, brutal and terrifying as it was, had to come out, and so she inhaled deeply, clutching her hands together so tightly her knuckles whitened, and said the words that would forever change both of their lives. Luna, I'm your mother. And the world seemed to stop in that instant, as though the earth itself tilted on its axis, and the Forrester mansion, where this showdown had exploded after another heated dinner where emotions had spilled and accusations had flown, fell into silence so heavy it could choke the breath out of anyone who dared breathe. And Luna, already struggling under the weight of revelations about her identity, her mistakes, and her future, stared back at Lee with eyes that widened in horror, confusion, disbelief, and a kind of wounded hope that frightened even her, because this couldn't be real, this couldn't be happening, this couldn't be the final puzzle piece to the fractured mess of her existence. And yet Lee's voice, though trembling, though breaking apart with emotion she had never allowed herself to show, repeated again, softer but firmer, I am your mother, Luna, not Poppy, not anyone else, you are mine. And as those words sank in, the dam of silence broke, unleashing the chaos of decades of secrets and lies, and the storm of feelings Luna had buried came surging to the surface with brutal force. And she shook her head violently, refusing to accept, to process, to comprehend, her voice breaking into a scream of betrayal and heartbreak as she demanded to know why Lee would lie to her all these years, why she would let Poppy play the role of mother, why she would stand in judgment of Luna as though she were some shameful outsider instead of her own flesh and blood. And Lee, tears streaming down her own face now, something rare, something shocking for the icy, disciplined woman who had built her reputation on toughness, confessed in agonizing detail how she had been young, scared, ashamed when she had given birth to Luna, how she had believed that giving her child to her younger sister Poppy would give Luna a better chance, a freer chance, a chance at joy that Lee herself, with her rigid sense of duty, could never provide, how she had convinced herself that hiding the truth was protecting both Luna and herself, but that in reality it had been cowardice, pure and simple cowardice wrapped in a mask of sacrifice. And now, with Luna staring back at her like a stranger, with years of resentment boiling beneath the surface, she finally understood that the lie had destroyed more than it ever could have saved. And Luna sobbed, clutched her chest, nearly collapsing under the tidal wave of pain as she remembered every time Lee had looked at her with contempt, every time Lee had judged her, every time Lee had claimed that she was weak, reckless, unworthy, every cutting remark that had left scars that never fully healed, and all of it twisted now into a grotesque irony, because those weren't the words of a disapproving aunt, they were the words of a mother who had abandoned her, who had punished her, who had pretended she was nothing. And the betrayal was so vast, so consuming, that Luna could barely form words, but she finally spat out through sobs, you hated me, and I never knew why, and all along it was because you couldn't face yourself. And Lee collapsed too, falling to her knees, clutching Luna's hands in desperation, begging for forgiveness, swearing that her love had been real all along even when it was buried under layers of denial, promising that everything she had done, no matter how cruel it had seemed, had been in some warped way an attempt to push Luna to be stronger, to be better, to be the kind of woman who could survive this brutal world. And Luna, trembling, broken, didn't know whether to scream, to run, or to cling to the mother she had always wanted but had never known she had. And as the emotions boiled over, other family members began to arrive. Finn, stunned to discover his cousin was in fact his sister Steffi, caught in the crossfire of another Finnegan family implosion. Bill Spencer, watching with that calculating glint in his eye as he realized the revelation could destroy or save Luna depending on how it was handled. Katie Logan, furious that the secret had been kept while her son Will's life had already been dragged into Luna's chaos. And Sheila Carter, of all people, standing at the edges of the storm, oddly silent, her eyes locked on Lee and Luna with a mixture of satisfaction, regret, and yearning, as though even Sheila, the perennial pariah, understood that this revelation was something that would alter destinies forever. And as the shouting, the crying, the accusations, and the pleas filled the mansion, one thing became crystal clear: this was no longer just a family feud, no longer just another scandal to be swept under the rug. This was the kind of revelation that would ripple through every corner of Los Angeles, every relationship, every fragile bond that held the Forrester and Spencer worlds together. Because Luna's identity had been rewritten in one breath, Lee's image had been shattered in one confession, and the fallout was only just beginning. And as the night dragged on, with voices rising, with alliances shifting, with hearts breaking, Luna finally stood, wiped her tears, and whispered with a mix of fury and grief that chilled everyone to the bone, "You stole my life, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive you," before walking out into the night, leaving Lee crumpled, sobbing, and begging for another chance, and leaving everyone else to wonder what kind of woman Luna would become now that she knew the truth of her blood, her betrayal, and the mother who had lived as her greatest enemy. Luna stormed out into the cool Los Angeles night, her heels clattering against the marble floor of the Forrester mansion before hitting the pavement, each step echoing with the fury and heartbreak boiling inside her. And though her body shook and her chest heaved, she couldn't stop, couldn't breathe, couldn't let anyone follow her, because if she stayed another second under that roof, with all of their eyes on her, she'd explode. She'd scream so loud that every lie her so-called mother had ever told would come crashing down with it. And behind her, Lee was on her knees, clutching the rug, her sobs guttural and raw, her carefully composed mask of perfection destroyed in front of everyone she had ever tried to impress. And Finn stood frozen, reeling, his entire medical mind trying to calculate the science of this mess, how the sister he had believed he barely knew was in fact his flesh and blood, his half-sister, his mother's firstborn, which made every judgment, every icy glare from Lee against Luna all the more monstrous, because how could a mother weaponize shame against her own daughter? And Steffi, watching Finn's face crumble, realized that no amount of strategy or planning could shield her family from this implosion, that every fragile bond she had been clinging to was about to detonate. Because if Finn couldn't forgive Lee, how could he forgive Luna? And if Luna's rage curdled into revenge, how long before she lashed out at everyone again, especially at Will Spencer, who was already struggling after being drawn into her chaos? And Bill Spencer, standing in the corner with Katie, exchanged a look with her, the kind of look only decades of shared history could carry, and he muttered low enough for only her to hear, "This changes everything. This girl isn't just some lost stray, she's Lee's blood, and that means she's Finn's family, Steffi's family, part of this whole damn dynasty." And Katie, though still boiling with rage over what Luna had done to Will, had to admit through gritted teeth that Bill was right, because this revelation tied Luna to everyone whether they wanted it or not. And Sheila, oh Sheila, she stood at the edge of the room, lips curled in a smile she quickly hid, because inside she was savoring this implosion like the richest dessert she had ever tasted, watching Lee, a woman who had lorded her superiority over Sheila for years, collapse under the weight of her own hypocrisy. And Sheila whispered to herself, just barely audible, "So little Lee has skeletons too," and she could already feel the leverage forming, the blackmail, the schemes, the way she could use this truth to claw her way closer to Finn, to Steffi, to acceptance. Because if Lee could lie about her own daughter, then how could anyone keep judging Sheila as though she were the only monster in the room? And meanwhile Luna was out in the dark, gripping her car door with trembling hands, unable to drive, unable to think, every memory of Poppy flashing through her mind, every moment of comfort now poisoned, every word of encouragement now hollow, because Poppy had been a mother and a liar, and Lee had been an aunt and a stranger, but also, secretly, the one who had brought her into this world. And the rage coursed through her veins like fire, but beneath it, buried, was a tiny, devastating ache, the ache of a little girl who had always wanted her mother's approval and had never gotten it, who now realized she had been chasing the love of the very woman who had abandoned her. And when Finn finally found the strength to move, to step past Steffi and kneel beside his crumpled mother, he whispered, how could you look me in the eye every day, teach me about truth, about integrity, and keep this from me?" And Lee's voice, cracked and broken, rasped back, "Because I was afraid, Finn, afraid of losing you, afraid of losing everything, afraid of being seen for what I really am." And those words cut him to the bone, because Finn had always idolized his mother, always believed her to be a pillar of strength, but now he saw her humanity in its rawest, ugliest form, and he wasn't sure he could forgive it, wasn't sure he could stand by her anymore. And as Steffi pulled him to his feet, murmuring that they needed to go after Luna before she did something reckless, Lee reached out, grabbing his hand desperately, whispering, "Don't let her hate me forever, Finn. She's my daughter, she's your sister, she needs us both." And Finn, voice trembling, whispered back, "You don't get to ask me that, not after this," before pulling away and heading out with Steffi, leaving Lee sobbing into the carpet, abandoned in the same way she had abandoned Luna all those years ago, while Sheila, unseen, slipped out a side door, already plotting how she would track down Luna, offer her comfort, twist her pain into loyalty. Because if Sheila could position herself as the one person who accepted Luna fully, motherless, betrayed, broken, then she could finally wedge herself into Finn's life in a way Lee never could again, and back at Bill's estate, Katie was already vowing to keep Will as far away from Luna as humanly possible, telling Bill that she didn't care what bloodlines had been revealed, that girl was poison and she would not let their son be dragged further into her chaos, but Bill, pacing, conflicted, muttered that maybe, just maybe, this was the chance to redirect Luna, to save her before she spiraled too far, because if she was Finn's sister, Steffi's cousin-in-law, Lee's daughter, then she was connected whether they liked it or not, and better to pull her into their circle than leave her out in the dark where Sheila could pounce, and Katie, horrified, shouted, "Don't you dare think of saving her, Bill, not after what she did to our boy," but Bill, ever the strategist, just stared into the fire, calculating, because he knew the war